I get it, you're staring at the spec sheet for a 17-inch gaming-oriented laptop and wondering whether it's really worth the cash, especially when a desktop could give you more raw power for the same price. You've probably asked yourself, will this thing run my creative apps and my nightly gaming sessions without overheating? Will the battery survive a day of work and a few hours of play? And what happens if I end up with a massive machine I can't actually carry around? Those are the exact questions I asked before I dug into the NIMO 17.3-inch model, and I'll walk you through what I found. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest draw of this laptop is the sheer size of the screen. A 17.3-inch FHD IPS panel isn't something you see every day in a portable computer, and the wide viewing angles make it feel more like a small desktop monitor than a laptop. For anyone who does color-critical work, photo editing, video timelines, or even game-level design, the extra real estate means you can keep your toolbars visible while you actually see the content you're shaping. In my own testing, I opened Photoshop with several panels, and the layout never felt cramped. I could still see the canvas clearly, which is a big win over the typical 15-inch workhorse. That screen size, though, brings a trade-off in portability. The machine measures close to the size of a small suitcase, and at just under 6 pounds it's definitely not something you'll toss in a backpack for a coffee shop. If you're a digital nomad who hops between co-working spaces, you'll probably want to think twice. On the other hand, if most of your work happens at a desk and you only need to carry it to the office or home occasionally, the extra screen space is a real productivity boost that could outweigh the inconvenience. Now let's talk about the heart of the laptop, the AMD Ryzen 7 7735HS. This 8-core, 16-thread processor is built on AMD's latest architecture, and it's positioned as a direct competitor to Intel's i7-based gaming laptops. In real-world gaming tests, titles like Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Cyberpunk 2077 hit a steady 5055 frames per second on medium settings, which is respectable for a 1080p display. What surprised me was how well it handled simultaneous workloads. I ran DaVinci Resolve for a video export while a game sat idle in the background, and the CPU didn't throttle. That's the kind of multitasking you expect from a creator who also streams or wants to unwind after a long edit. Heat is where the story gets a little messy, eh? The laptop uses a dual-fan cooling solution that's fairly aggressive, and you can definitely hear the fan spin up when you push the GPU with a demanding title. In a small office setting, the noise sits around 45 dB, noticeable but not ear-splitting. However, during a 10-minute benchmark run, the fan stayed in a higher RPM range and the chassis warmed up enough that the palm rest felt warm to the touch. It's not a deal-breaker, but if you're sensitive to fan noise or plan to game in a quiet environment, you might want to keep a set of headphones handy. Speaking of the GPU, the integrated Radeon 680M is a step up from older integrated graphics, but it still isn't a dedicated RTX card. For esports titles like Valorant, Fortnite, or League of Legends, you'll see smooth 60+ FPS at high settings, which is great for competitive play. For AAA games that demand more horsepower, you'll need to dial settings down to medium or low to keep frame rates comfortable. If you're a serious gamer who expects ultra settings at 144 Hz, this laptop might feel like a compromise, but for a creator who also wants to game casually, it hits a sweet spot. Memory and storage are where the NIMO really tries to differentiate itself. With 32 GB of DDR5 RAM, you have enough headroom for massive Photoshop files, multiple virtual machines, or large 3D scenes without seeing a dip in responsiveness. The 1TB NVMe SSD loads Windows in under 10 seconds and shaves minutes off large project file transfers. I tried moving a 12 GB video file from one folder to another and it completed in a couple of seconds, no bottleneck there. For users who work with large media libraries, that kind of speed translates directly into time saved. Battery life is another practical concern. The laptop ships with a 100W USB-C power delivery charger, which means you can top it off quickly, about an hour and a half to go from 10% to full. In mixed usage, email, light browsing, a bit of Photoshop, the battery lingered around 5 to 6 hours, which is decent for a 17-inch machine with a power-hungry CPU. Push it into a gaming session and you're looking at 2 hours before you need to plug back in. So if you expect to game on the go without an outlet, plan for short bursts or bring the charger. Security features are subtle but useful. A fingerprint sensor sits under the power button,